one of the most amazing things in history that nobody really talks about was 5 a.m. on June 5th. Dwight D. Eisenhower, he had consulted with the Allied commanders one last time. This was it. This was the day they had planned for. This is the day they dreaded. This was the day everything turned. The weather was unpredictable. It had been bad for so long. The military was like a caged animal waiting every day. And then one of the largest gambles in history. It came down to one guy, Eisenhower. Ike had to make the call. Early that afternoon, just before, he sat at his portable table and wrote out a press release on a pad of paper. He wrote it out so he didn't have to think about it after the battle had begun and was being lost. It was a contingency just in case the invasion didn't succeed. He wrote it, and he kept it with him that day. He wrote in his own hand, "Our landings have failed. I have withdrawn the troops. My decision to attack at this time and place was based on the best information I had available. The troops, the air, the Navy, they did all that bravery and devotion to duty. They did all of it that they could do. If any blame or any fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone." A million things could have gone wrong. But in advance, he took responsibility. Honor, duty, sacrifice, personal responsibility. These used to mean a lot more. I think they will again. They have to. Man always goes through cycles. We're just in a downturn of that personal responsibility cycle. Everybody seems to want something for nothing. Everybody is feigning to be a victim. It's not too late for us to rediscover those traits as a country. It's funny because we've been in the position before where all seems lost. The whole world seems lost. And then at the last minute, we wake up. And we live those two words. At the last minute, we earn it.
It's Wednesday, June 6th. You're listening to the Glenn Beck program.
Today on television, we're going to be sharing another tribute to D-Day that is pretty powerful. A stark reminder of how hard it was on that day, 74 years ago, as we stormed the beaches of Normandy and just were slaughtered. We were just slaughtered, but we took the beach. An amazing sacrifice. And for what? You know, it wasn't for gold. It wasn't for treasure. It was for an idea. It was for an idea that this monster was trying to tell everybody what to think, what to do, how to live, how to raise their children, how to work, who should live, who should die. It was just this, it was unthinkable. It was just unthinkable in a world that it had exited that world. We had left, the West had left behind the darkness of the Dark Ages and Middle Ages, where one man could just decide whatever he wanted. Then he could just take whatever he wanted. Then he could grind people in the machinery that he had built. That was unthinkable. That was throwing us back to the Dark Ages. There's a new way. There was a way that Americans truly understood at that time. At least better than we do now. All men are created equal. And I know that you can say, well, were they really all equal? No, they weren't. Man has never gotten their arms around that. No matter where you go, no matter what the philosophy is, there's somebody always under the thumb of somebody else. Society always deems somebody at the lower level of the ladder. But it's an idea that we're supposed to strive toward. Not just say, well, that didn't work. No, we're never going to get it right. And it's going to ebb and flow. But right now there is this effort to discredit not only the people that came up with that idea, but the idea itself. Just throw that out. Why would we throw that out? All men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Why would we throw that out? Well, right now there's an effort to make sure that everybody knows that our founders they were so racist. They were so racist. How could Thomas Jefferson ever write those words? What a hypocrite. Well, he was a complicated man. Really? So he writes all men are created equal, and he doesn't even think of the slaves? The Declaration of Independence? Not a word about slavery? This has been the greatest privilege of my life. The privilege of being able to have access, which you do, it's just online, to have access to the original writings and documents. Yesterday we were doing a piece on the Second Amendment and how people are trying to twist the words of the Second Amendment. And what was the original intent? What is the argument they're making? And is there anything to that? And because we're having our museum next week, and it's this little pop-up museum, and it's all about the rights and responsibilities, we brought in the engraving of the first draft of the Declaration of Independence. It's from the 1800s, early 1800s. And it is an exact copy or an exact engraving of the first draft that was written in June 1776, all in Thomas Jefferson's own hand. And you see John Adams and Benjamin Franklin in their own handwriting, scratching things out and changing things. It's amazing. It's an amazing document. And it's going to be on display here at the Mercury Museum next week. But as we were sitting there and we were getting ready for the show to start yesterday, Stu and I were looking at it, and I was upside down from it. And I've had this document for a long time, and I've never really read it all the way through. And as we get to the usurpations, those are all the lines. There were just one lines. And the king did this, and the king did this, and the king did this. And this is why we're breaking away, because the king did this. There's a whole paragraph. And it stuck out because as I'm looking at it, I'm standing on one side of the document. Stu is reading it from the other side. And I'm looking down, and I can see Christian King all in capitals. And I said to Stu, what is that? And he's like, I'm just reading it now. It's amazing. Now, this is in Thomas Jefferson's own hand.
Slave owner, Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Evil slave owner that didn't want to write anything at all about slavery in the Declaration of Independence. This is from his draft that he wrote by himself in a room while his wife was miles and miles away dying. He's writing this.
Talking about the king. He has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere, or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither. This piratical warfare, the opprobrium of infidel powers, is the warfare of the Christian king of Great Britain, determined to keep open a market where men should be bought and sold He has prostituted his negative for suppressing every legislative attempt to prohibit or to restrain this execrable commerce.
So what did he just say? First of all, every single problem they had with the king, every single one prior to this is one line. This is a paragraph.
Yeah.
And what is he saying? This guy is mocking all of mankind and sinning against mankind by going over to a foreign land, grabbing people who never did anything to him, sending them over on a boat, moving them to a different hemisphere, enslaving them. If they make it, the journey they probably are going to kill. It's a horror-filled journey. And then he's doing everything he can as we try to abolish slavery. He is standing in our way. Well, wait a minute. What? I thought they were all slave owners that didn't care.
And pretending to be Christian while doing it.
Yeah.
They actually are mocking. They say, "You think this guy's a Christian? He's trying to continue this market where people are bought and sold." I mean, he's blatantly against slavery here, and we've talked about this before. In that he did have slaves, however, it was illegal for him to free those slaves.
Yes.
So that is a big asterisk to that whole story.
And he tried to change that law several times. And he couldn't get that law changed.
And as he's complaining, in the rough draft of the Declaration of Independence. Now, later on, South Carolina and Georgia, and there were some factors in the North as well, businessmen who did not want this practice to end, and they wound up taking this paragraph out.
Right. But it was at the request of 2 slave states. Mm-hmm. Now, you could sit here all high and mighty and say, well, why did they should have just let Georgia just walk. They couldn't. Because if they did, they would freedom would be over. Why? Read the next line that he wrote.
Let's see. Tried again the suppressing every legislative attempt to prohibit or restrain this execrable commerce, and that this assemblage of horrors might want no fact of distinguished dye. He is now exciting those very people to rise in arms among us and to purchase that liberty of which he has deprived them.
Okay, so
and murdering the people upon whom he's also obtruded them.
Okay, so what is he saying there? He's saying, on top of that, he will not let us free them. He will not let us stop this horror. But now he is going in and he is trying to give slaves money to fight us. He enslaved them, and now he's paying them to come and kill all of us. What? They couldn't let those 2.
This line isn't in there, but the king was a douche. Let's be honest about it.
Okay. Well, again,
it's not in there.
It wasn't in there.
It should be in there.
Right. Real quick, read the line before. One of the other reasons why we broke away from England. Okay, there's a whole paragraph, but each line is just loaded. Most all other offenses by the king were just one line. Read this one.
He has incited treasonable insurrections in our fellow subjects with the allurements of forfeiture and confiscation of our property.
Civil asset forfeiture was a reason we broke away from England.
And you pointed out, Glenn, you usually get to access these online. Not the case this coming weekend. Or not this coming weekend. The weekend of Father's Day. Yeah, June 12th and 13th, right?
No, 15th through the 17th.
17th, yeah. Sorry.
All right, that's all right.
I'm looking at the wrong thing. But that's a pretty big deal.
Yep.
And you can actually see that document along with many, many others.
Yep. And it's going to be an incredible experience. And join us here in Dallas, Texas at the Mercury Studios. Rights and Responsibilities. You can get your tickets now at mercury1.org/museum 2018. You can take special tours with me or one of the other guys, or just join us. I'm going to be here all weekend. All of us are going to be here. We really want to see you. June 15th through the 17th. Great Father's Day gift. Tickets are on sale now. mercury1.org/museum 2018. All right, let me tell you, the June Fed meeting is coming up on the 12th and 13th. Economists are overwhelmingly predicting that the Fed is going to raise raise interest rates. If you have found a home that you're interested in financing, or if you're interested in taking advantage of today's competitively low rates, do it now before the 12th meeting. American Financing can help, whether you're buying your first home, your next home, an investment home. Let American Financing customize the right loan program for you. They're not a bank. They don't work for anybody but you. So they're not trying to jam down your throat a loan program that the bank wants. Pre-qualify in 10 minutes, close in as fast as 10 days. American Financing, salary-based mortgage consultants that don't work on commission, they work for you. An A-plus rating with a BBB and over 1,700 Google reviews. They offer e-sign. You can complete your documents from the comfort of your own home. There's no upfront fees. They use every single loan available, and they're going to customize it for you. Licensed in all 50 states. It's AmericanFinancing.net. That's AmericanFinancing.net, or call them now, 800-906-2440. 800-906-2440. AmericanFinancing.net.
American Financing Corporation, NMLS 182334, www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org.
So Howard Schultz from Starbucks, I don't think he's running for president. Do you, Stu? I mean, he just came out and said, the guy who just closed Starbucks, okay, he comes out and says, Democrats, you've got to be more moderate. You're becoming crazy. Really? Did you just close Starbucks for the day because two people who didn't abide by the rules were asked to leave, and all of a sudden it's the crime of the century? It's like the Lindbergh baby was stolen.
Yeah, that was I must react in a way that will serve my future campaign.
Set me up to be president.
Yes, look how seriously I took this. Of course you can trust me as your Democratic nominee. It definitely seems like that's what he's going for.
Yeah. And then immediately get out. So any of the backlash from that on sales or anything else, I left. I don't have anything to do with that, really. And immediately, as the door is still swinging closed, you're like, hey, you guys, we all have to moderate here and not be so crazy and reactionary.
Beck, Mercury. This is the Glenn Beck Program.
So Stu will give us a quick rundown on the California primaries yesterday, anything that was important. We'll get to that here in a second. There's also a candidate running for the 3rd district in Utah, and he is a guy who is, another Mike Lee. He's a guy who, wants to go down that road and hold the GOP's feet to the fire. His name is Chris Herod, and he is with us now. Hello, Chris. How are you?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me on, Glenn.
So tell me about the Republican congressman that you're running against right now.
Well, we had a special election last summer for Jason Chaffetz, but, he's a former Democratic chair, in Utah. He switched 3 days before I ran against him when I ran for the Utah House, and ended up being appointed to go to the Utah House a decade ago. And so he has a very spotty record. And, we had a debate this week, and he called me an extremist because, I'm a platform Republican. If you want to know how I believe, look at the platform. And I'll vote like Mike Lee and Ted Cruz. But that's kind of how it is even in Utah, where, a platform Republican is being called out to be an extremist. He had as a mayor, he hired a sanctuary city police chief that said he wasn't going to help the feds do immigration law. Unfortunately, that police chief is Provo City right now. There's a sexual harassment lawsuit against that police chief, and the mayor, had numerous opportunities, according to the lawsuit, to fire him and didn't. So there's a big difference in the way that we see the world.
So the Second Amendment, he is currently, this is Jason Chaffetz's old seat. The guy you're running against currently on the Second Amendment is for taking away their right to own a firearm until you're 21.
Yeah, no, that's a big difference for me. As we've had conversations before. I've taught in the former Soviet Union. I have friends that lost both their parents to Stalin's gulags. I have a business partner from Ethiopia. The communists came over, took the guns away, and within a decade, having had to shout "Red Terror" as teenagers were being shot down. And so for me, the Second Amendment is you cannot take that away, because to me it's actually an insult to our men and women around the world that can carry a fully automatic weapon, and then you're telling them they can't come home and purchase a .22 rifle until they're 21. I just cannot believe that anybody would think that that's a good idea.
Chris, when you were over in the former Soviet Union, what did you learn? What did you take away from that?
For me, the biggest thing is a lot of people talk about socialism. For me, it is not theoretical. My wife literally bears the scars of socialized medicine. I can say without any problem that socialism is wrong. It robs the individual of their full potential. It weakens the family, and it eventually morally bankrupts society. And yet our youth don't get that today. And, I'm a big believer that, not only do our congressmen need to stand up and vote right, but they need to get up and teach these principles. We have lost that. I mean, I spoke at a Second Amendment rally about 2 months ago at the Utah Capitol, and I thought this was great. There was 400 people, talking about how the Second Amendment could help us with school safety. And then I went around to the front of the Capitol where the anti-gun people were having a rally, and there was 8,000 to 10,000 people shouting, Utahns for gun control, Mormons for gun control, and I was absolutely frightened. I thought I was in 1930s Germany, seeing, Hitler's youth taking away guns, because I know where it leads. And the problem is these same kids that were speaking at that rally, they were talking about every other progressive agenda, and they don't realize that that system always leads to authoritative rule and loss of freedom. And they were calling people Nazis, and Nazi stands for National Socialist. The philosophy that killed the most people last century was socialism. You look at what Stalin did. Stalin starved to death 7 to 11 million Ukrainians in my wife's native country, and yet our youth don't realize they're going to need the Second Amendment if we keep going down this socialized path.
When you were over there, you knew a former MiG pilot and his family.
Well, actually, that was in Provo's Freedom Festival. I actually got to know him. It was Victor Belinko. He's the one that defected in the 1970s. He flew with his countrymen trying to shoot him down. He landed in Japan. I met him. I actually met a family, at the Provo Freedom Festival. They built a homemade hot air balloon and flew from East Germany to West Germany. So I've been fortunate in my life to meet lots of individuals that have paid a high price for freedom. But, for me, it's just frightening that our children don't understand, how lucky we are and how easy it is to lose freedom.
So, Chris, we have sent a lot of people to Washington, D.C., and I'd say 80% of them just, turn out to be disappointments at best. Only a few, like Mike Lee, stand, and I mean, they are under enormous pressure. What makes you think you're going to be able to go there and I mean, the enemy is not the progressive left as much in Congress as much as it is the progressive right.
No, that's exactly right. The way that I point that, I've stood up here in the state of Utah for, I've been called all sorts of names, racism, fascist, unchristian, uncompassionate, just because I believe that immigration should be done legally, and I've stood against it, illegal immigration. And so I've had a record of standing up, taking on the establishment. But I also, I have a beautiful wife that if, I ever went any other way, would constantly remind it. You talk about your wife, keeping you on the straight and narrow. My wife would do the same, but I've paid a high price here in the state of Utah. I've lost contracts because, I spoke for truth. And so I have a record of doing that, and for me, it hasn't been the easy path. I'm still kind of by nature a shy person. I have to overcome all these things, but I believe so much that our country is in jeopardy that it's just not worth it for me to go and immediately cave if I went back to D.C.
Chris, where do people go to get involved with the campaign?
HerodForCongress.com. That's Herod, like the bad guy in the Bible, but with 2 R's. HEERROD for Congress.com. I'd love to have some comments. If you feel like donating, I'd love to have you go there. But But I believe these are the elections of our lifetime, and we need people. It's not if you think you can send me back to D.C. and I'll solve all your problems, I'll do my part. But I think it's time for all of us to pledge our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor.
Chris, thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you very much.
I think we found an official slogan there, like the bad guy in the Bible. That's I don't think is that going to be on any campaign signage?
I don't think so.
Chris Herod, herrodforcongress.com, HERROD for congress.com. You can get him at Herod, the number 4 Congress on Twitter.
It's important that you protect your home, your family when they are home. You need a great security system. How many home security system companies are out there that think, how can I really make this better for people by doing things that, I don't have to do, like protecting privacy? One of the things I love about Simply Safe is they are regular people just like you, and they still think just like you. That's why years ago they came to me, maybe 3-4 years ago, and they said, hey, look at this. This is our new camera, blah, blah, blah. And it was great, and it worked really well. It was great, and it didn't come out, and it didn't come out, and it didn't come out. I sat with them, and I said, so whatever happened to the camera? And they said, well, we were thinking about it. And as we were putting it in our own homes, to try it out, we were like, I'm not comfortable with somebody with just an open lens in my house all the time. Wow, really? And they're like, yeah, and everybody else has to feel that way. So they redesigned the whole thing, spent like a couple of years trying to get a lens cover that you could hear open and close, get the right kind of metal that made the sound, could be durable for thousands and thousands and thousands of openings and closings, something that would make sure that they're protecting you from bad guys that are trying to get into your home and break in, but they're also protecting you from bad guys who are going to try to, view you from afar. It's Simply Safe. Find out all about Simply Safe and why millions of Americans are now using this. You're going to save a buttload of money. There are no strings attached, and there's no contract. Save 10% right now on your home security system from Simply Safe by going to simplysafebeck.com. That's simplysafebeck.com. Now, there's a new poll out that shows that Americans are just tired. When it comes to the news, they're just tired. They just can't take it anymore. I don't know if you fit in that poll, but I am. I'm tired of the media, and I'm just tired of the dishonesty. That's what I'm tired of. Look, just tell me who you are and tell me what you really believe, and let's work it out from there. But instead, we're just arguing back and forth, and the media is not doing anything to help move the discussions forward. They've gone insane. There was a story out yesterday that we're not, the rest of the media is not talking about because, we have to, hear the latest of Stormy Daniels or Samantha Bee or whatever it is. The Eagles, did you see what happened with the Philadelphia Eagles? Did you hear anywhere that Medicare now is going to go broke 3 years earlier than expected? It's going to go broke. It's expected to completely run out of money by 2026. That's earlier than projected. 2026. Don't worry, that's only 7 years away. I'm sure we can come up with a plan. We're not talking about that. It was sad to see that we are talking about Kate Spade. It was sad. It was good to see that we were talking about it. And sad because of what it meant. But as I was reading the comments, I was fatigued. The people who were saying, well, that's just what weak-minded people do. That's just what people do who are selfish. Really? If you don't know, Kate Spade is the purse person that made all these purses and became a very famous designer. And then lost control of her company. I mean, she sold her company. She sold like 56% of her company and her name. And so she couldn't do anything under her name anymore because her name had become a product. And she was fine for that at the beginning with the exchange. But then mental illness set in. And make no mistake, it is mental illness. You don't come to a place to where you say, I want to kill myself. Everything in the human psyche is built to stop you from dying. Every little creepy feeling when you get too close to an edge, to the spider senses that are saying something's not right here, I shouldn't be here. All of that is protection so you don't die. It takes extreme mental issues to be able to get to the point to where you say, I'm better off dead, and so are all the people around me. And it's a lie. People were writing last night how selfish it was for a mother to do this. I know. My mother did this exact thing when I was about the age of Kate Spade's kids. It screws you up for life. You never get over it. My nieces and nephews were the same age that I was when my mother killed themselves, when their father killed himself. They haven't recovered. It's been a decade and a half. You never do. As somebody who has been in clinical depression, somebody who has gone through a period of my life where I honestly considered killing myself. There's a huge difference between that and every bad time that I've ever gone through, where I thought everything was hopeless and this is never going to end and I don't know how we're going to turn this around and oh, my life sucks and whatever it is. That's normal. There is a different level to where you start thinking to yourself, I'm so tired. I can't do it another day. When you start to actually think that it's logical, that life is better if you weren't living, that others, their lives would be better if you weren't living. It's a mental condition to take a scarf out and hang yourself, as she did yesterday. The reason why I bring this up is because my life was saved by a guy named Bobby Dries years and years ago in the 80s. And he had gone through depression before, and he recognized it. And he said to me, you are coming with me to the hospital now. And he took me to the hospital pretty much against my will. And I'm alive today because of that. Life is hard. Mental illness is a condition. There is help and treatment. Your life is so great once the clouds start to dissipate. Please get help.
Glenn Beck.
Is there a blue wave that is coming? Because it looked like it back in January, and Democrats boasted a 12-point lead just 5 months ago. That lead is now down to 4 points. Now, that is amazing. For as hard as this media has worked to tear the Republicans and Donald Trump apart. It doesn't seem to be working. In fact, it may be backfiring. Now, that lead at 4 points is really almost within the margin of error of 3 points. But let's just, in case the wave is real, let's just look at it. It's critical that we educate ourselves with the agenda that they are starting to push. To conquer the wave, let's first learn how to surf their issues. We've seen a lot of talk about, free healthcare and free college tuition. This morning, I really want to spend some time talking to you just about the minimum wage. That's the first one. $15 minimum wage. Been a staple for people like Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. I mean, I could go on, but the progressive crazy list is way too long to fit into a 3-hour radio show. So just let's start with those guys. The federal minimum wage is now $7.25. Progressive lawmakers want to effectively double that. Now, that might be something that San Francisco should do, or even the state of California, but not in Idaho. You're not going to be able to afford to keep things open. And I contend even in Seattle and San Francisco and Los Angeles, you still won't be able to keep things open. It's minimum wage. What effect does it have? Now, you've probably heard a conservative pundit, on the media, a right-leaning politician claim that jobs would suffer if this was a reality. But what is the data that backs that up? If McDonald's is suddenly forced to pay $15 an hour to all of their workers, would they do as we expect and begin laying off employees to compensate for the higher wages? Well, that is what those of us on the right claim. But is it reality? Let's go to Noah Williams. He's an economics professor at the University of Wisconsin. He crunched the numbers in 2 states to find out what effect raising the minimum wage had on jobs. He used fast food employment job numbers, which is the standard for measuring low-wage industry job changes, in both Minnesota and in his home in the state of Wisconsin. From 2010 to 2014, fast food employment, both states, grew at the same rate. But from 2014 until today, Wisconsin began outpacing Minnesota by over 4 percentage points. Employment is dropping in Minnesota and rising in Wisconsin. What's going on? Good thing he was tracking. The problem began in 2014. That is the same year that Minnesota began implementing a minimum wage increase. Wages went up to $9.65 an hour for large employers and $7.87 per hour for small employers. Now, if you consider $15 an hour as the ultimate progressive goal, what Minnesota did is actually considered pretty minor. But look at what those small tweaks did to the employment. Now think about what would happen at $15 an hour. Kiosks will outnumber employees in every business, from fast food, grocery stores, retail, gas stations, everywhere. This is just one of the crazy progressive issues that we need to be knowledgeable about and actually have the facts at our fingertips over the next few weeks, months, and years. Progressives and socialist principles rely on ignorance of facts to succeed. It is up to all of us to deny them that opportunity.
It's Thursday, June 7th. This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Stu, are you following at all on what is happening with the economies of the emerging markets around the world as ours gets better and better and better? What's happening?
You had a good outline on this actually on last night's TV show. You can watch on demand at theblaze.com/TV.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I mean, you dive into this stuff, I think, more than anybody that I know. So most of the stuff I've heard from you. But still, I mean, it's a scary picture. I mean, because I think we in the United States now think, well, our economy is doing pretty well. And in many ways it is. I mean, throwing out things like spending and long-term debt. But I mean, in the general vicinity, like where we are right now, we kind of are in a happy place, right?
Job wage inflation is a worry for the first time since 2000. Since 2000,
yeah,
the Fed is now worried about job wage inflation. I'm not concerned about wage inflation. That's okay. And the reason why that's happening is because there's so few people that are looking for a job now. It's the lowest in 50 years. And so that means that our wages are going to go up because there's not a lot of people to replace you. That's good. That's competition.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, that's great news. And we are at the lowest unemployment rate with the exception of April 2000. That goes back, 50 years. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of real positives here. However, the way these things start, usually negative turns in the economy, they usually start somewhere else and filter into...
Well, this one actually goes into my my theory that if you remember, Stu, years ago, I said, if we start printing money to keep up with our spending, the rest of the world is going to suffer, and we are going to be the greedy pigs that get slaughtered. What happens to pigs? They get slaughtered. And we are now seeing the beginnings of it. And here's what's happening. The Federal Reserve is tightening the monetary policy, which is something that we've wanted to do. Stop printing money. What they were doing is they're saying, we're not just printing out of thin air. We're buying these assets, and we got all these. Well, these assets are crap. Well, now they're starting to unload those assets, and that requires people to buy those assets. If you're the Fed, you take that money, and you're not making more money. You're now destroying that money. So as you sell $50 billion of something, that money has to come from the money supply that is out there. They take that $50 billion and they take it internally and they burn it. So it's gone. So they're destroying this by $50 billion chunks. Well, what happens? Well, the people that were really taking that low interest loan and were doing really, really well with it was the emerging markets, the places like India and Indonesia and even, Venezuela and all over South America, third world countries, even Mexico is deeply affected by this. And they took these loans out because dollars were plentiful. Well, now dollars are not. And so these short-term loans are being reset because dollars are fewer in those countries now. The banks have to charge more in interest. And so they don't have the money to continue these loans. So things are collapsing. There's starting to be chaos. There's starting to be cash shortages because we're absorbing all of it back. And it's not just the $50 billion. That probably would be okay to do. But remember, nobody's ever done this and survived. It would probably be okay. But it's also that we're running a $1 billion deficit. I'm sorry, $1 trillion deficit now. In our budget is calling for, we're short $1 trillion, but we'll just make it up. Well, they're not printing those dollars now. We have to go find those dollars, and we're the biggest one on the block. So when we soak up $1 trillion in cash, all those people who are at the bottom of the barrel, they don't get money, and they need it, and so it's uprising and chaos. And if we don't stop our spending and we don't look beyond our own borders and see what the Fed is doing, we are the pigs that will be slaughtered. Because all around Central America and South America and in Asia now, a storm is brewing. Imagine a darkness, something darker and scarier than the deepest parts of the ocean. Darker than that awful darkness of space, the darkness of night, a house shackled by darkness because there isn't any electricity, and there hasn't been for months. But then again, that's not the dark I'm talking about. The real dark is the dark part that lives inside of you, the things that you now have to do on a daily basis just to stay alive. Around the corner, you hear the bestial shouts from a Caracas jail. The prisoners have taken over, at least that's what you hear. They feel they can do a better job of controlling themselves than whoever has been doing it lately. It was 100 years ago that this country was lavished in wealth. Not too long ago, you too were rich. You were healthy in that chubby 19th century Russian diplomat way. You ate well. You probably ate too much. black turtle beans and fried bananas, asado negro. You drool just thinking of the tender shredded beef and the carrot and oregano tinged broth. You strode through steakhouses on special occasions. You ate T-bones like a Texan. You drank Chilean wines, Malbec from Argentina, occasionally a glass of cognac. Not because you were drunk, but because you could. Because you enjoyed the sprouting goodness that life had to offer. Man, that life, it seemed like it was never going to end. Now look at yourself. You're a bag of bones. Bones jutting out like false teeth. At times, you think about all the energy you waste just breathing. What happened? Now you can barely afford a single egg. One egg. Eggs that fall out of the backsides of chickens, and I can't afford it? Your mouth quivers at the thought of a fried egg tender. So tender it pops open with just the prod of a fork oozing onto the fried papaya and rotisserie chicken. You've lost 120 pounds since it all started going to hell. And now, you're in it firmly. You weren't rich, you were middle class, lower middle class even. That's just how good things used to be. Although there was always the cinder block hovels that you can see from the plane as you land in Caracas. Now it has spread. The office, where you used to work as an accountant, it's now empty, abandoned, overtaken by squatters, people like you who lost everything, who limp a little more each day toward their death. Men all in black now patrol the streets with shotguns, black bulletproof vests and black tarp-like shirts and black pants, black military boots. People hamper cars in the street because there's nowhere to go, nothing to do. Gasping a bit, you rest below a crucifix statue, the left tilting head of Christ emblazoned in a soft and sad light, the burnished rise of daylight breathing into a new day. Looking at Christ, perhaps for the first time you understand suffering. You understand his defeated look, the look of hopelessness and violence and death. The hopelessness of surrendering, and surrendering until it stops mattering. You hope. You have that one hope left, that all things will change. But you really hope that just anything begins to change. It was all so promising at the beginning. Everybody was going to be able to live the high life. And now, only a handful are, and they are the ones that live behind the gates. This, you think to yourself, this is the socialist utopia they promised all of us as Venezuelans? As you sit there under the statue, you begin to replay it all in your mind and wonder, where are all those Americans, those celebrities, those from Hollywood that praised our leaders and helped convince us that this was the road to prosperity? I wonder what they're eating tonight. We will post that on my Facebook page, along with video that makes it a little more poignant. And we invite you to share it with everybody that you can, especially if you have any connections to Hollywood, because I really would like an answer to that question. Where are they today? Liberty Safe continues to just be the best. They really are. They make the best built safes here, all in America. They have great suppliers and great stores to buy them in. The local safe stores or places where you can buy Liberty Safes. They're just really good people, and they're the ones that you're going to meet because they're the ones that will come out and install it. And right now, Liberty Safe is offering a 12-month interest-free payment program with zero down and zero APR. They even offer Liberty Safes for as low as $20 a month. Been working for Liberty Safe now for about 8 years. I've never seen them do this before. And if you want real peace of mind, you want to make sure that those pictures or those documents or whatever it is that you have in your home are safe and they're not going to be broken into. It's not going to be taken away from you, and you're not going to lose it in a fire. It's Liberty Safe. If you worry about your guns and somebody getting in and taking the guns, getting a hands on their guns, no one is getting into a Liberty Safe. Have it installed in your home now with 12 months interest-free payments for as low as $20 a month on approved credit. But you have to act now. It's at libertysafe.com. Go there now, libertysafe.com, the home of the best-built safes on the planet, libertysafe.com.
Looking for a great Father's Day present? Then bring the whole family to the Rights and Responsibilities exhibition presented by the Mercury Museum. Take a glimpse of what the world was like before men had rights and tyrants ruled. Join us Father's Day weekend, June 15th through the 17th here at Mercury Studios in Dallas. Get your tickets at mercury1.org/museum 2018.
So, it's amazing. You know what Maduro is now blaming the power outages on in Venezuela? You're going to love this one. He says, I'm quoting, "It's because we're very close to the sun. And while the rest of the world is cold, it's hot here. And that makes the situation more serious. It's because you're closer to the sun." Huh. Well, that does make sense because I know the higher up on the mountain, the more the snow boils. Because you're getting, the higher up you go, it's always really hot there.
Yeah, that piping hot snow can scald you at those elevations.
Oh, my God. If you have an uneducated, and Venezuela was not uneducated. You have an uneducated mass of people who are starving, they will believe whatever it is somebody tells them if they can feed them.
And unfortunately, that one's falling through the crack in Venezuela, as we just heard.
Yep. We want to thank Nick Daly, by the way, one of our producers on the program that helps us make all of those with audio. He's an amazing guy.
Yeah, he's very upset, though, about that particular piece. It took him an extra long time to do that one because he was very upset that he could not find the street ambiance in different languages. He apparently only has dozens of varieties of English-speaking crowds, and he didn't want you guys to think that the ambiance of the street in Caracas, where they speak English, so he had to search to find.
I didn't even know how horrible this is. Amazing. I didn't even notice that anybody was talking in the street ambiance.
It's the amount of detail that goes into those things is it's why most of the people who do them are government funded.
Yeah,
there's a lot that goes into those things.
Yeah, so please share that. We'll put that up on our Facebook page. We'll put it up on glennbeck.com. Put it up on theblaze.com. So you'll be able to share that that real question on here's what's going on, and where are all the people that held this up? Where are all the people that said this is great, it's going to work?
Yeah, and what's Sean Penny doing tonight? It's not dogs that he's hunted down in the street somewhere. I'll tell you that. He's not having that problem.
The things that the people have to do now just to live. The number of women and mothers that have gone into prostitution just to be able to feed their children. The literal hunting of the zoo is empty now. They've already eaten all the zoo animals. They're out now hunting for dogs, cats, and rats just so they can eat. Pray for the good people of Venezuela and pray that we do no more damage with our Hollywood elite, and we do no more damage here because we wake up to our own problems internally and our own march to a world that looks like that. Glad you're here. I want to start with freedom. Freedom yesterday. Freedom yesterday for a woman that was not expecting it to come. Alice Johnson She was freed from prison yesterday, pardoned by the president. This is the woman that Kim Kardashian met with the president on. It's such a 2018 story on how this thing happened.
It really is. Here's a woman who is in prison. She's been in prison for 20 years. She's serving a life sentence for as everyone keeps saying, first-time nonviolent drug offense, right? So it's a pretty extensive punishment for what she did. And
she's already served 20 years.
Right. And so she's already served 20 years, the idea being maybe they should commute that sentence. So Mike.com, this is how the story begins. Mike.com makes a viral video. The video does, in fact, go viral, and Kim Kardashian sees it. Kim Kardashian then becomes an advocate for this woman because of the viral video and winds up getting to the president of the United States, who takes her meeting and then commutes the sentence. Like, that is legitimately like 2018 justice. And I don't mean it even in a negative way. It's kind of exciting, right? Like that, some probably like underpaid staffer at Mike.com was like, this is an interesting story. I'm going to put some text on this video.
By the time we would have known about Alice in the old days, 20 years ago, she'd be dead. She would have died in prison before we all started to know about her plight.
Yeah, and what would have been the other path? It probably would have been like a New York Times, magazine story that maybe with maybe it moved people over a long period of time. But like this is like, some guy was probably making $12 an hour threw together a video, and now here we are.
Here's the audio of her being released yesterday.
First of all, thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Without him, I can do nothing. But with him, I can do everything. I will thank President Donald John Trump.
I heard the John that often.
Give me another chance in life. And restore me to my step.
How great is that?
Awesome. You see in her face. Yeah.
I'm just so thankful. I feel like my life is starting over again. This is a miracle day. The most unexpected thing to happen to me in my life.
It's amazing. I mean, not only is it the right thing to do. I mean, I think everyone kind of has united on that. But it's also really smart politics. I mean, it really is. To take these cases and, use his constitutional pardon power to take the worst of these cases that everyone can kind of identify and say, okay, like we all think, people should pay for their crimes, but this one's pretty ridiculous. And to find those,
I hope, and I understand that Jared is really overseeing all of this and what he's done with Israel. I'll say that he's pretty good at getting things done.
Yeah, for all the criticism he took of, like, look, he's giving his son-in-law these ridiculous important tasks. Well, I mean, the two major ones he's looked over have gone pretty well.
Yeah, the other one is prison reform, and I hope we look at sentencing reform as well. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I wanted to touch on freedom because yesterday was also the 74th anniversary of D-Day. And what these guys went through for our freedom today is truly remarkable. Truly remarkable. My Uncle Leo was a guy who never, ever shared with the family that he was on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. He was in the first wave. His best friend, Black Eye, was mowed down. I'm sorry, no. Everybody else was mowed down. He stepped off the side. He couldn't swim. And they had to stop before the beach. He was thrown out, and my Uncle Leo was talking to the captain who was in charge. He's like, he can't swim. He is going to die. He can't swim. Doesn't matter. Get off. And threw him off. He went right down to the bottom, never came up. And my Uncle Leo, this is the day that just changed him. And he never spoke about it until about 5 years before he died. And it was remarkable to hear somebody that you knew talk about something especially fresh And the first time he said it was emotionally filled, just emotionally filled. These guys were remarkable. And quite honestly, lucky. Hitler was nuts. You know what Hitler was doing when D-Day happened? The night before, he was up with Goebbels and everybody else, and he was up in, what was that place called? The
only color film you've ever seen of Hitler is, right?
Yeah.
His like vacation retreat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he's there, and he's got everybody there, and they're just watching films, and they're talking about films and art and everything else.
Very typical of what they did all the time. Stayed up till 2, 3 in the morning all the time. BSing, drinking, eating, talking, mostly Hitler, ranting and raving about whatever topic he cared about. I mean, they did that all the time.
Yeah. Luckily for us, they had done that the night before. So he goes to bed as our troops are starting to advance. They hit the beach at 6 a.m., I think, and he's still in bed. Nobody wants to wake him because he's tired, he's grumpy, and he's been saying the first thing that happens, it'll be a decoy.
They're going to fake it first.
Yeah, whatever they do, the first one won't matter. It'll be the second wave that matters. And so everybody was like, all right, well, we don't have to tell him because, he thinks that this is just a decoy anyway, so let's not do anything, which saved us. By the time he was up, dressed, and briefed, it was noon, 6 hours into the fight.
It's amazing.
Incredible.
And they had, divisions of tanks that they could have, repositioned to help, and they didn't for hours and hours, even after it was requested. And Hitler wasn't mad when he woke up. Why didn't you tell me this was going on? He was like, oh, wow, good. I'm glad this is finally happening. He thought it was a moment of triumph. This is their last gasp. I mean, he had absolutely no idea what he was doing at so many times. Thank God. Thank God he was so cocky and so wrong so many times.
And honestly, thank God that they believed some of the crazy things that they did.
Yeah.
It saved so many. At the very end of the war, they were going back to dowsing. You know what that is? That's when somebody takes a divining rod. That's how they were finding subs at one point, or claiming to. There's no evidence that it ever worked. Mm-hmm. But they put a lot of resources in, and they got all these people who were professional diviners or dowsers, and they made a giant map on the floor, and they had these guys take their divining rods, and they said, okay, where are the submarines? Their fleet is over here. And they would go out, and there would be nothing. And they wasted so much time. And in the end, they were looking for not Thor's hammer, but what's the cube? You guys don't know the cube. What's the energy that is powering everything? From Thor and his hammer.
As you know, I'm not a superhero movie guy, so
you know it from the movie. It's the cube that the guy, the red mask, or the guy that.
I can't focus on anything other than his pecs, to be honest.
Okay. All right.
It's too beautiful. Anyway,
they were looking. What is it? The Tesseract. They were looking for the Tesseract. And that's what they were working on as we were building the bomb. Thank God. Yeah. Thank God.
I mean, we have a special coming up in the coming weeks, and it's a lengthy one about Hitler's monsters.
It's like 5 or 6 days.
Yeah, it's like a series, and to bring you through all the basic. I mean, to summarize all the crazy crap that Hitler believed, and the Nazis believed, and why they believed it, and
how they're not Christians.
Oh yeah,
this was not a Christian movement.
No, but I mean, it's amazing how much of that nonsense derailed them from legitimate scientific discovery from really talented scientists that could have doomed the world, honestly.
Yeah.
Thank God they believed in nonsense.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't, it could have been a lot worse, and that's saying something when you're talking World War II.
Yeah. By the way, there's a lot on World War II at our museum that is happening this next weekend, not this weekend, but the weekend after Father's Day, here at the Mercury Studios. We're all going to be here that weekend, and we would love to. We're opening up the doors. This is the first time I've ever opened up the entire studio, 80,000 square feet of the studio. And it is, you're going to see some of the stuff that's, backstage, from the costumes and the ruby flippers and everything else from the Wizard of Oz, and different props from different movies, including Darth Vader's the mask from 1978 of Darth Vader from A New Hope. All of it's going to be on display. On the front half is the actual pop-up museum, and that is the rights and responsibilities, and that is going to be pretty powerful. In fact, I was going over it yesterday, and I think we're going to give people the option as a cut-around, because it's going to be disturbing. The first, maybe 10% of the movie, the first 10% of the museum is taking you to the world where there was no right. You didn't have rights. The world before and the world after our Constitution, where they do not recognize human rights and what that means. It's powerful. So come, bring your family. It's a great Father's Day gift, and it's happening next weekend, June 15th through the 17th, and tickets are on sale now at mercury1.org, mercury1.org/museum 2018.
We hear a lot from people who say that their kids don't understand what the Constitution and this experiment in freedom has achieved. You won't take it for granted after seeing this.
No. And you will. It leaves you with the question of: are we going to go back, or are we going to go forward? What are we going to do with these rights? Because it takes responsibility. This is a real great way to teach your children and to experience it yourself and things that you've never seen before, including the original copy of the Gettysburg Address on display at the Mercury Museum, mercury1.org/museum 2018. There's also something that, in case you can't come, we started a new series, and it's called Hands on History. And Hands on History is a way for us to tell the stories of history, but in a different way, to pick a topic. Like today's is character. Character matters. Who are you? Character really matters. And so to take the things from the museum and show, this is a person of character. This is a person of no character. This is a person of real character. And these were the items that made our history. And today we today we talk about character, and it's about Jesse Owens and how he made it, and the Olympics in 1936, and Himmler, and Goebbels and Hitler, and it's a really good one. It's available now on the Facebook page for The Blaze, just facebook.com/The Blaze, and on my Facebook page, right after this broadcast, which is about an hour and 10 minutes from now, we're going to be doing a small broadcast where I'm just going to take you behind the scenes of Hands on History, and we're just going to walk over, and I'm going to show you some of the things that are in this Hands on History, and we'll go a little bit deeper. So you can do that at glenbeck.com, the facebook.com/GlenBeck, and you can see Hands on History at facebook.com/The Blaze. Wow, way too much. Do it, and we'll see you here next weekend. All right, let me tell you about our sponsor this half hour. It is Goldline. When you see what is happening with the shortage of money, this is a crazy thing, because I thought we printed too much. Well, we did. And I've said from the beginning, the dangerous part is when you try to pull it all back in. Why? Because nobody in human history has ever been able to do it. They've never been able to print their way out of a problem and then pull it back in successfully. It's always bad. Well, we're seeing now why. The rest of the world, Indonesia came out today and said, we're joining with India. Please stop pulling your money back in. Why? Because there's a shortage of cash in those countries. They have to use our cash. It's making cash really, really hard for them to be able to have loans for everyday life or for business. But we're sucking that money back in because of inflation, and we're spending $1 trillion more than we were just a couple of years ago. Where's that money coming from? We're gobbling it all up, and it's hurting the rest of the world. And it will lead, it's already leading to inflation all across South America and the rest of the world. And it's going to do the same with us. Gold is the only protection against inflation. Call Goldline now, 1-866-GOLDLINE, 1-866-GOLDLINE. Read their important risk information. Make sure that gold or silver is right for you at 1-866-GOLDLINE or goldline.com. Hey, so you know Google's coming out with a new Google Assistant?
Yeah.
And you know, what could possibly go wrong, right?
No, I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the Google internally is talking about there is one problem. They didn't expect people to ask Google Assistant for advice like, should I break up with my boyfriend? Is my boyfriend cheating on me? Things that are very, very personal, and they're now having to go, I don't know how to answer that one. I
think it should go through the emails and figure it out.
Exactly right.
Yes, it is. Name the person. When's the last time they met? Here's the receipt. I think it should just become a private detective.
Right. And it probably will be. Let me ask you this. How difficult and how... I mean, who doesn't believe that a large portion of the country will just say, hey, Google, who should I vote for?
Glenn Beck.
Can we all act like adults for just a little bit? Because we are running a constitutional republic, and maybe we should have, a constitutional conversation from time to time. President Trump yesterday pardoned somebody else and is commuting sentences and talking about prison reform. And I think that's really, really good. But let's actually now have the constitutional conversation. President Trump yesterday commuted the prison sentence of Alice Johnson. It was a really touching moment and a really good thing. She's 63 years old. She's from Tennessee. She was a first-time offender, but it was a pretty big job that she was pulling. She was serving a life sentence in federal prison for drug possession and money laundering. Kind of bad. She served 20 years. She's now a free woman. The president's move is getting cheers from both sides of the aisle. Van Jones strangely became a Donald Trump fan last night. With an exception of him, the left doesn't want to get too carried away. After all, it's still President Trump, and he's the worst human being ever to walk the earth. First of all, Donald Trump is able and very capable of taking care of, himself. Nobody doesn't need anybody to stand up for him. He's doing a pretty good job at that. Alice Johnson, the reason that Kim Kardashian visited the White House last week to speak with the president. If this isn't 2018 and the way things get done now, it's amazing. A reality TV show star goes to see a former reality TV star who is in the office because she saw a video made by an obscure guy at an obscure website, and pretty soon the wheels of justice, the rust has come off and it's moving. Not that that's a bad thing. It's just a very different thing. This went up on Twitter last year and ended up putting together a legal team to work on Johnson's case, Kardashian. Eventually, Kardashian reached out to Jared Kushner, who helped arrange the meeting. Now, here's the deal. This might be really a real positive by President Trump. We need prison reform. We need to talk about sentencing. But we can't mistake this for actual prison reform. Alice Johnson may not have been, I don't know, deserving of having her sentence commuted. Seems like it. But I'm not the one sitting here looking at all of the facts and know everything. Perhaps life in prison is way too much as a penalty for her crime. Maybe. It seems like it. But the administration needs to be careful that this doesn't turn into a game of who can catch the eye of the king. There are apparently 30 more of these sentences that are going to be pardoned by the president in the coming weeks and months. Okay. If it is part of an overall plan. The U.S. has the highest incarceration rate in the world. Currently, 2.2 million people are behind bars, a rate of 860 inmates for every 100,000 American adults. It costs $183 billion a year just to run our prisons. And while prison reform might improve conditions and shorten some sentences for current prisoners, that's not doing anything serious about sentencing reform. That's not doing anything serious or lasting. The president has an opening here to now use this from the bully pulpit to show we have a problem, then collaborate with Congress on real prison and sentencing reform to make it lasting. If they do that, then a move like yesterday could be used to promote and roll out the reforms. Again, it seems like a step in the right direction, but it's a dicey step, particularly as the way it's portrayed in the media. As a reality star shows up, a grandmother inmate gets immediate justice. That's not the American system. And while you may not, and I may not worry about the abuse of this power from this president, what precedent are we setting for the next? These issues need a lot less TMZ and a lot more adult constitutional conversations.
It's Thursday, June 7th. This is the Glenn Beck Program.
So David Barton, a good friend of the program, and also, aren't you like chairman of, what is your executive something or other of Mercury One? You're the head of Mercury One.
Yeah, the president of the board.
President of the board of Mercury One, and doing a fantastic job, David. He has been a friend of ours for a long time, and he is a guy that, as you may know, supported Ted Cruz during the election. And when Donald Trump started to pull ahead and was the nominee, David said, good, rolled up his sleeves and said, let's get to work from the inside. And we were sitting in our office the other day, and David said there was so much happening behind the scenes because the media is just not paying any attention. They're all on, the scandals that they're seeing. Is Melania dead? It's the latest. That they're, thank goodness, missing a lot of the real work. Do you want to go through some of this stuff, David?
Yeah, let me throw out one just as a start, because I think this is such a great overall view of what's not being covered. Was in Poland recently, was with the Deputy Prime Minister, the Secretary of the Interior, and he was saying, the problem we've got in Poland is that we don't produce any energy in our own country. We have nothing here. We get everything from Russia. We live off natural gas. We get it from Russia. So it really puts us at their mercy. And they're doing to us what they did to Ukraine. They squeeze them down. They cut off the oil and gas supply. And he said, and last week, your Secretary of Energy, Perry, was over here, and I was telling him about this problem. And as I was telling him about the problem, he kind of grinned and looked at me and said, well, how much natural gas do you need? And the Deputy Prime Minister said, well, we need something like 182 million cubic feet a month. And he said, Perry looked at me and said, we just happen to have 182 million cubic feet a month that we can send you. So right now, Poland gets all of its natural gas from the United States. No longer does it get any from Russia. Poland is also taking natural gas, selling it to Ukraine, so Ukraine is no longer dependent on Russia. So that's two nations that are now free from Russian control.
So now here, what's amazing is this is something that Ronald Reagan had warned about and had tried to change. I remember this conversation when I was a kid, and Reagan saying, when they're free, they've got to be free of the energy.
That's right.
And we have to supply Eastern Europe, and nobody's been able to do it or get it done.
Well, it's interesting that right now, the United States is now exporting oil and gas to 30 different nations in the world. Matter of fact, Texas is now producing as much oil and gas as Saudi Arabia. So we are now surpassing OPEC. It's estimated in the next 20 years, America will produce 80% of the energy being sold across the world. So we are now sending oil and gas into the UAE and into OPEC nations. They're getting it from us. And I was talking to somebody just last week, and it was that to get a drilling permit took 16, 18 months to get cleared. It's now taking under a week to get a drilling permit.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's turned around completely. The regulatory climate has changed. What Scott Pruitt has done at EPA, knocking off 67 major regulations, EPA cutting EPA budget by 31%. I mean, it's huge stuff. and it's having substantive impact. But I love it because it's not getting reported, because Trump is over here doing tweets like, I just canceled the meeting with the Philadelphia Eagles, and everybody's reporting on that. And every one of I'm just looking, when's the last time you heard anything going on with any of the cabinet secretaries?
Nothing.
Is it getting a free ride?
Nothing.
I love it.
It is amazing. We talked about this because Barack Obama tried to overwhelm the system. He just dumped everything in at once and got everybody. They didn't know what to cover. Nobody knew what to cover, what was important, because it was all happening. That's not Donald Trump. I think he's doing all of that as well. But I'm not sure if it's strategic. I'll give him the credit for it being strategic, or if it's just the chaos that he loves.
Who cares, really?
Yeah.
And who cares? If
It doesn't matter. That's right.
It doesn't matter.
It's getting stuff done.
But here's where the GOP is missing it. You have someone laying down cover fire.
Yep,
that's right.
Every day.
That's right.
And where is Congress? Nobody in the press would be talking about They could pass it. We could go on the gold standard, and I don't think they would spend more than 2 minutes on it. If
just right before the vote, tweet about Stormy Daniels will be fine.
Yeah,
everything will be fine.
By the way, maybe she's not the only porn star, and they wouldn't care. You could do anything.
And while the cabinet seems to be taking advantage of that, Congress is not.
Now, it's interesting because one of the things that's starting to happen right now is you're having an insurrection over on the Senate side with Republicans who are pushing back to get some substantive rule changes. One of the things, let me see if I can put this in context. What's happening over in the Senate on delaying tactics using the rules is, if you look in the first 6 months of the Obama administration, 200 nominees were confirmed. In the first 6 months of the Trump administration, 31 nominees were confirmed. So at the current rate the Senate is confirming his nominees, it will take 11 years to get his nominees confirmed.
Unbelievable.
So they're using just arcane tools. I mean, Rule 22 is a good one. That's a cloture rule. And the cloture says, okay, we've debated this enough. Let's stop debate. Let's move on. So what's happening is Democrats, even if they have no debate at all, are requiring maximum time on every rule. So they'll say, all right, debate time on this nominee is going to be X number of days. They go through that many days, and they say, but we want debate to continue. So what happens is McConnell says, okay, we're going to invoke cloture. When he invokes Rule 22 to end debate, at that point in time, it requires a full intervening day for the cloture motion to ripen. So you say, we're going to end debate. Then a couple of days later, you can vote on ending debate. Then he says, all right, now we're going to vote on ending debate, and then you have to wait 30 hours to debate ending debate by the rules.
Oh, my God.
And so at that point in time...
How did we ever invent the light bulb in this country?
It's crazy.
I mean,
it's crazy.
It's the way that,
didn't happen in Washington.
That's right.
Yeah.
They had no power to stop anybody from doing it.
That's what's happening. And so it's interesting because if you look at the Senate really is the obstruction right now. The House has passed over 400 bills that the Senate has refused to take up. And grab this. Over 200 of the bills the House has passed have been passed by 400 votes in the House. It means completely bipartisan. And you cannot get the Senate to take up a single one because they keep invoking all these times. So even if Democrats totally vote for the nominee, they're using every single procedural tool they have to put day and weeks and add on to it. And so they have no time to take anything up. And it's been 10 years since the Senate has passed, as required by federal law, a budget. That's why they keep going to omnibus bills and continuing resolutions. The House has done all the budget work. All 12 appropriations they've gone through. The Senate won't do it. So you're now having enough Republicans. I think we're down to only one or two Republicans are standing in the way of changing all the rules and saying this is not what was intended. This is not what was designed.
Where is Mike Lee on that?
Mike Lee is on the right side of that. Okay. There's a couple, and, I don't know. There's always a couple of Republican senators off the reservation, whether it's Murkowski or whether it's Olympia Snowe or whoever it is. But even they're getting to the point where, so what happens is senators do a pretty good job of covering for each other. They won't point out who it is that's holding things up. But it's getting to the point where I think we're going to see some. So that's why you saw McConnell this week say we're not going to do August recess. We're going to stay in because if Democrats want to keep running the zone, they'll just lose their time. And it looks like they're going to start looking at staying over weekends and voting later, which Democrats will hate because they got 33 senators up for election this year. 27 are Democrats. So if they lose the ability to go home and campaign because they're doing this delaying tactics, if McConnell holds them in over August, if he holds them in over the weekend, et cetera, I think a lot of that will change. And where it's going to have a huge impact is on judges, because what's happening in judges right now, despite even the delaying tactics, at the end of this year, Trump will have appointed 30% of all Court of Appeal judges. Wow. Now, that's huge because the Supreme Court only hears about 0.1% of all federal cases in a year. So your circuit courts, your Court of Appeals, they're essentially the Supreme Court over those states because 95% of cases never go past the Circuit Court of Appeals. So the fact that he is going to have 30% of the judges appointed in those courts of appeals by the end of the year, as a matter of fact,
and those guys are being picked by Ted Cruz and Mike Lee.
That's right, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz.
I mean that is
huge.
Wow,
it is huge stuff. If you take the Philadelphia-based Third Circuit and Philadelphia, that Third Circuit that handles Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, already just with the nominees he's gotten through, it is flipped from Democrat to Republican control. So think of the states that are now under a much more conservative judicial philosophy.
And that
the Fifth Circuit has now switched. Fifth Circuit was liberal. It's come back to conservative. If you look at even the Ninth Circus, and I don't call them a circuit, I call them a circus. Right now, it's 16-6 Democrat judges versus Republican judges. There are 7 pending open slots in the Ninth Circuit. He fills those 7. You're now looking at 16-13 as opposed to 16-6, which are more likely to get some reasonable decisions, less stupid decisions out of there. You've got the Second Circuit that's about to turn over. I mean, it's unbelievable. And this is where Cruz and Lee and these other guys have been so good, is they've convinced Grassley that the nominees we want to get through, despite all the delaying tactics, let's not go for district court judges. Let's go for Court of Appeals judges. So at this point, there's been 42 judicial nominees confirmed that Trump has put forward. One was Gorsuch, Supreme Court. The other 21 have been Court of Appeals judges, 20 have been district court judges. So they're really focusing on getting Court of Appeals judges because that's where so much of the influence is.
David, thanks for the update. We're going to come back and chat just a real quick bit about some lasting changes. Are these all changes, with an exception of the judges, that can be changed back with the next president, and how we avoid that? Also, the leadership training program, which Mercury One runs with youth. They're going to be on TV with me tonight talking about what they've learned in the last couple of weeks. I know we have a new group coming in next week. We'll talk about that coming up in just a second. First, let me tell you about the Palm Beach letter and what they have done for us. I would say we're pretty good with cryptocurrency and blockchain, and we know what it means, and we know how it works, kind of, as much as the average Joe, better than the average Joe. But the average Joe really needs to learn about blockchain. You really need to learn about cryptocurrency because it is the future. You also need to learn how to invest in it. Stu just invested in cryptocurrency.
I've been doing that for a while.
Yeah.
There was one in particular that I invested in, and there was like a whole set of things you had to do to make it actually count, and that you weren't just like dumping your money into nothing. I didn't really read it per se.
Yeah.
So
that's not a good idea.
Yeah, I think Tika would have said, "Hey, moron, you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z before you do this," and then I probably wouldn't have lost all.
So
the money.
he had his money in this. Is it still going up or down, or what is it doing?
Who cares now? It does not worth anything.
He put his money in this, and then he missed this deadline where, hey, there's a fork in the road or whatever it is. You got to say yes or no, otherwise
register your tokens.
Yeah. He didn't do it, so he lost his money. These are the kinds of things that you need to avoid. You can find out all about them with smartcryptocourse.com. That's smartcryptocourse.com. Tika Tiwari from the Palm Beach Letter is the one who's put this together for us. It's just for you. Smartcryptocourse.com, or you can call 1-877-PBL-BECK, 1-877-PBL-BECK, smartcryptocourse.com. So we're going to continue our conversation with David Barton here in a few minutes on the changes that are happening behind the scenes that nobody is seeing in Washington. And I want to talk to you about lasting change. I mean, there's things that the president can do by executive order, but as we know, as President Obama now knows, it doesn't matter. Once you're out, it can change again. And that's not good for the country, not good for the economy. It's just not the right way to do things. But I want to talk about that here in a minute. We are surrounded by a group of 20-somethings that have been here for, you guys been 2 weeks now? Let's say in the second week. And they've been doing part of the leadership training program. And how's that been going, David?
It's been going really good. And what a class act. I mean, we have such good guys here.
I spent, about an hour with you guys last Friday? Really, really bright. Really bright. They're going to be on TV tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about what they've learned and what they've seen and if it's changed. Has this changed anybody? Has this changed? Raise your hand if you've, like everybody, I think. Everybody has raised their hand. It's a remarkable thing. And we have another one coming...
Starting next Monday.
Next Monday. And people can still get involved?
Still get involved. We have 2 more for the summer. We'll have 2 left in the summer that we're doing and still have slots available in both of them.
Okay.
It's a wonderful program.
Okay. And what you do is you get to access, original documents, original sources. You get to learn the true history of America, the good, bad, and the ugly. And if you're part of next term, which is starting on Monday, you're actually going to be here for the museum, and if anybody's still around, you guys might want to pop back in.
A bunch of these guys are coming back to volunteer so they can be here for it.
Yeah, good. So you'll be able to talk to the guy who's, running the Lincoln Museum, and he's got unbelievable stuff to talk about Abraham Lincoln, et cetera, et cetera. So, all right, so you can sign up at mercury1.org. /LTP Leadership Training Program. We would love to have you or your son or daughter, if they're between 18 and 24. You are welcome. Just go find all the information at mercury1.org /LTP. Back with some more behind the scenes of the Trump administration when we come back.
A friend of mine was looking to sell his house recently, and a bunch of construction started up on a street. Now, that's not something that you can control. You have no control over that at all. But it becomes the whole, neighborhood is a disaster area now, and it's going to be impossible to sell this house unless it gets a really good real estate agent, someone who can, walk people through. Hey, this is going to be done. This is what's going to look like. I've pulled the plans. This is actually going to be a much better situation, and you're getting in at the right time. It's a tough sales process, but you need someone who knows these things and actually cares about getting you the best deal possible. Go to realestateagentsitrust.com to find that person. They have over 1,200 agents all over America. They are qualified with their advertising plans and the results that they get and their values. These are people who listen to the show, who are going to share your values, and that's really important. If you need to sell a house fast and for the most money, or if you're looking to buy, go to realestateagentsitrust.com. You'll be introduced to the best agent in your area. It's realestateagentsitrust.com.
You're listening to the Glenn Beck Program.
Our new program, Hands on History, which premiered on our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel, about a week ago. The second episode is out. It's already up at facebook.com/theblaze. You can watch it, share it with a friend. It is the artifacts today that help tell the story of why character matters. And I'm going to be up on the my Facebook channel at facebook.com/GlennBeck. Just about 25 minutes from now, we're going live, and I'll show you the behind the scenes of Hands on History and go a little more in depth on some of the things that point to character that are in this episode that you can watch right now on our YouTube channel or facebook.com/theblaze and my Facebook channel in about 25 minutes. Okay, David Barton is still here. We're talking about the behind the scenes of the president and what is being accomplished, and the press is so busy, just reporting, the non-movements of Melania Trump that they're not seeing any real progress, and it's pretty staggering. Would you say the biggest long-term impact, David, is coming from the judges?
It definitely would be judges. Right. Absolutely.
And we're not talking Gorsuch, who, by the way, is turning out to be really good.
We may have another one coming up, but we have 129 judicial vacancies right now. Trump still has about 80 nominees he needs to make. He's already nominated 82 nominees, and so we've got 40. No, it's more than that. He's nominated 128 judicial nominees. There's 139 vacancies and 30 more announced. He's going to have to make about 80 more judicial appointments just to get those empty slots filled.
Give me some idea if that's a lot more than regular presidents?
It's a lot more than regular. Okay. What will happen is over the course of 4 years, if a president has 2 terms, he will appoint about 40% of the judiciary, 874 judicial slots. So if he's in for 8 years, he will get about 40% of those judges. So at this point in time, we're, again, almost 30% with Court of Appeals judges in 2 years. not 8 years, but in 2 years. And so you look at the number of slots, it could be at the end of 4 years, if we can get all these nominees done, we're going to be looking at in that time at about 35% in 2 years.
I'm completely oblivious to how this actually works. So I'm asking honestly, is this, because I think what the process behind, from what I understand of how Trump is doing this, is it means he's picking good judges for these roles. But is there anything that Trump is doing to make it so he's getting to more of them than before, or are there just more people retiring?
No, there are more people retiring, and at the end of the Obama administration, the Senate held off on confirming any judges. So there was about the last year of Obama that nobody got confirmed on the courts. So Trump inherited over 100 open slots at that point in time. You've got a lot of judges that go out anyway. There's 30 announced vacancies now. They haven't retired, but they're going to retire. So you have a pretty high turnover anyway.
So it's not necessarily what he's doing as far as getting to more of them. It's the fact that there was a big backlog, and the ones he's naming are quality.
That's right. And his
selected by Ted Cruz and Mike Lee.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really...
There's been very few to object to. There's a few that we say, not great. I mean, there's one going to California on the Ninth Circuit that certainly wouldn't fly in Texas, but out
California.
There, it's California. And so you have to make selections from the states where there's quotas you have to have in the states. I think California has to have so many, and Hawaii gets whatever. And so there's seven states in the Ninth Circuit, and so each one has to contribute some. And so he's limited some geographically in where he chooses from, but overall, I mean, the quality of judges is just unbelievable.
So talk to me about the laws that are actually being passed, because those are things that the president, the incoming president, whoever he might be, either in 2 years or in 6 years, he can reverse. He can't reverse the judges, but he can reverse any kind of executive order. So talk to me about the things that are not really easily reversible.
What's happened is Obama used a lot of executive orders. He had a phone and a pen, and he used it very aggressively. In the first 6 months of the Trump administration, 46 substantive laws were signed. Substantive laws were passed by Congress, signed by the president. That's more than any Congress in 30 years. Of those, 14 were permanent repeals of executive orders by Obama. So under the Congressional Review Act of 1996, if a executive order goes through, Congress can override that order. And once you do it, it's going to take a federal law to sit it back in place. So it becomes very hard to go back.
Do you know which ones those were?
Oh, I don't. I have a list of them, but I don't recall what they were. But it's going to become hard for a president to issue an executive order and get back to where Obama was, because now you got federal laws.
That's a Gingrich era reform, right? That really had never been used.
That's right.
Until this administration.
And they're using it aggressively. And, we hear that Congress not getting things passed, and that's true. On signature stuff, they didn't get Obamacare.
Yeah.
They got the individual mandate.
Those are good moves, though.
But the stuff they are passing is not small stuff. And they measure a substantive act by, you're not naming a post office. You're actually doing something real. And so 14 of those were permanent repeals of executive orders under the Obama administration that can't come back again. So that's good. Other things that are happening is what particularly Trump is doing with religious liberties. It's going to be really hard for the next president to actually reverse that because, for example, one of the things that happened, we saw with Hurricane Harvey, is FEMA is not allowed to serve churches and others that get hit by Harvey. Well, Trump reversed that. It's going to be hard for a president to come back in and say, oh, yeah, we're going to exclude churches from disaster relief. Just PR-wise, you can't do that.
This right to try act.
The right to try was huge.
Yeah.
That's right.
Republicans have been trying to get that done for a long time.
Yeah, Nate McMillan and 35 states have done it. It's a state thing. It's just the feds that haven't got on board with right to try.
So can I ask
you? If you don't know what right to try is, that's you can use controversial. Or experimental medicine if you are suffering from a terminal illness.
Can I ask about Scott Pruitt?
Yes, fire away.
Full disclosure, I come at this as a Pruitt fan. He was one of my favorite appointments, and I've really liked what he's done so far in the EPA. So full disclosure, I'm coming at this as a fan, so maybe this is tilting me. But I keep looking at I watched a segment yesterday on CNN about the list of controversies swirling around Scott Pruitt. They ranged from he has spent too much money on pens.
That bastard.
He was assigning aides to do menial tasks. Okay. He had taken trips with first class airfare. and he had spent too much
and
on
nobody
security.
at CNN has ever done that.
No one's ever done that.
Nobody's
No, of
ever done
course
CNN.
Now, look, some of those are sort of optics. They're pointless optics mistakes, right? Like, there's no reason. You shouldn't. You should make sure when you're under a target, you're going to be EPA. You're going to be doing things that are not going to be liked by the press. You should probably be more careful with some of those things. But like security, do we not remember
ELF?
Yeah, ELF, for example, on the environmental front, and not to mention in the same 15-minute segment where they were saying he spent too much on security, they highlighted that Steve Scalise was back in uniform for the first time. Why was he back in uniform for the first time? I don't remember. Was it because a left-wing nutjob tried to assassinate 10% of elected GOP officials?
Well, we talked about these leftist activists up in Vancouver, Montreal. I can't remember. Up in some place in Canada. It's an architectural firm that is working with the government on something. They came and they took at night the wall off, funneled a bunch of crickets into the walls, nailed it back in place. The entire place has to be condemned now. It's like a brand new architectural building, and it has to be condemned because you'll never get rid of the crickets. They were infested with crickets.
So I guess my question is there anything with this Pruitt stuff? Is it just media creation? Are they targeting him because he's actually making a difference at the EPA, or is he really doing something corrupt?
Oh, he is making a huge difference at the EPA. I think that's why he's targeted. There's been at least 67 major rules rewrites at EPA. He's cut EPA budget by 31%. So, I mean, this is one of the chief enforcement arms for moving forward a radical environmentalism. You remember they took 1 million acres from Wyoming, Well, he's not doing that kind of stuff. So he's not a good, I mean, that's why they like activist judges, because they can never get this stuff done legislatively. But if they can get a bureaucrat to do it, well, Scott's actually reining this thing back in to where that it's more of a serving agency than a ruling agency. And so a lot of it is media creations. Definitely optics is part of it. Scott needs to be real cautious of how, and he is now. He's got his hand burned and slapped by CNN several times. But it is a media creation. It's more of a fake news kind of a thing. There's nothing there. And the thing I have noticed with Trump that I find really amazing is if there is some fire behind the smoke, he gets rid of people pretty quick. And he stood right by Scott. He's not calling for Scott to go down. He's not doing anything to go after him. And so I think he's dug into it and is satisfied there's nothing there.
You know Jeff Sessions quite well. I am real concerned that of what's happening with Jeff Sessions on the ability the ever expanding ability of law enforcement just to come in and take your possessions, take your money, and just never give it back, never arrest you, never charge you with anything.
Yeah, and that is a real problem. Sessions is cognizant of that, but that is such a huge bureaucracy. Let me see if I can put this in perspective. If you we're talking, there's 23 cabinet level areas that kind of meet together in cabinet. So, you've got a dozen or so genuine cabinet things, but Scott Pruitt, EPA, the National Security Advisor. So if you take just one of the cabinet agencies like Health and Human Services, that agency by itself has so many employees that it is the world's 6th largest government, and it's just one of our agencies. And so when you get over in Justice Department, you got the same thing. You're running a foreign nation government. It is huge. And so his ability to know what's going on under him, and over there, they're like the State Department. They have more lifetime appointments over there in terms of lower level prosecutors and others. Part of, if you want to call it the deep state, which we started using here in recent, you've got that problem at Justice. And so when you look at Schedule C appointees that the president can put in over there, it's going to take a while to get that thing moving the right direction. So Justice and HHS, agencies like that are very, very, very hard to have systemic change because you're unable to fire, That's what, by the way, that's one of the things Congress did do was actually let you fire bad people at Veterans Department. Now, they need to be able to do that at the other places as well. Yeah. You need to be able to fire bad people everywhere. But at this point, the actual federal process it goes through to get rid of a bad employee, good luck. I mean, it's like getting rid of a federal judge. It's like an impeachment process. It's that same level of difficulty. So Justice Department is one of those where you have a lot of entrenched lifetime bureaucrats that are philosophically aligned in a direction that we're not. Is
Jeff Sessions philosophically aligned?
No, he's not that way. Now, he is not combative. He doesn't have the combative side that you often see, particularly with Trump. But he understands how to use the system. He's been a senator long enough that he knows how the system works, and he knows where to start putting pinch points on to create some pressure and some tension. So he's using the system well internally, but it's not going to be the stuff that you're going to see up top for a while. It's process changes that are being made internally, and they will eventually come up, and you'll see it. But it's just not anything visible that you can point to right now. It's
David,
internal stuff.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
We will. We'll see you, of course, next week for the museum here, and we'll see all of the students at 5:00 on the Blaze TV to see what they have learned and what their experience was. Thank you so much, David.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Our sponsor this half hour is Simply Safe. It's important to protect your home. It's important to protect, your children at night, yourself at night. When somebody somebody wants your stuff, they can break in. And usually the good thing is only in movies do burglars break in at night. They usually do it during the day because they don't want to see you as much as you don't want to see them. So when you're gone, now, how do you protect your home? But do it, in a fiscally responsible way with new technology. Simply Safe. Simply Safe is completely wireless, and so nobody can cut the phone lines or anything they used to do. I think in the old Columbo movies, it can be done now with Simply Safe. SimplySafe.com/Beck. It's a new way with no contracts. You own the system. No strings attached to it at all. You can cancel your 24/7, Overwatch service, which is only $14.95 a month. You can cancel that at any time. No questions asked. You're in control of your life and your security. It's simplysafebeck.com. Go there now. Save 10% off your security system. Simplysafebeck.com. Welcome back to the program. Last few remaining minutes, we're going to go over to my Facebook page here in just a few minutes. Continue on with something kind of a behind the scenes of a new series that we are doing called Hands on History, which we take the objects that we have in our museum and we kind of put them together in a very eclectic way to show you different principles behind history. This week, it's all on character. And we start with George Washington and end with Adolf Hitler and Jesse Owens. So it's quite a span. Hands on History. You can find it on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/theblaze. Make sure you subscribe. And we'll be live on my Facebook page at Glenn Beck.
One of the things you have in the museum, a lot of really violent items from history. They're not the only violent items out there. Right now we have guns, of course, which they're
only made to kill.
That's the only thing you could possibly use a gun for is to kill people. That's the only use. Only use. And the other one are knives, which the only use of those, I don't know if you know this, is to cut. And somehow those are legal. However, there's a solution being proposed by a judge in the UK that I think is pretty smart. He is saying that we should cut down the violent crime by filing down the pointy parts of knives. Now, if we just have no pointy part on the knife, everything should be okay. The vast majority of knives carried by youths are ordinary kitchen knives. Every kitchen contains lethal knives, which are potential murder weapons.
You know what? If you made them a little thicker, okay?
Yeah.
And you filed off all the sharp and pointy parts.
Right.
We don't have to do that. We just melt them down and make them into pipes because nobody could do anything with a pipe.
Exactly.
No pointing parts on it.
What are you going to make out of a pipe? Right? There's nothing you can do with that.
You could
do make it
with a pipe. And there's nothing, or even just, you couldn't use that as a club because it's a pipe.
It's a pipe.
Right.
You can only run water through it.
Right.
He, however, says, why do 8 and 10-inch knives need points? Butchers and fishmongers do, but how often, if at all, does a domestic chef use the point?
Can I tell you, you know what needs a good point is this judge. That's what he needs. He needs a good point. Keep it to yourself till you find a good point, because that's nothing like a good point.
No.
What you're talking about there is nothing like a good point.
Glenn Beck, Mercury.
The Blaze Radio Network. On demand.
Glenn
Beck.
Today is the 74th anniversary of D-Day. Now, I don't know about you, but over the years, this anniversary gets sadder and sadder. At first, I remember growing up, and there were World War II veterans everywhere, and, you could talk to them. But every year that goes by, fewer and fewer men alive were actually in Normandy on June 6, 1944. Those who are still with us are too frail to make the pilgrimage now to France for the anniversary ceremonies like they used to. It's sad that we're losing these people. I mean, it's normal. But once we lose them, once they're gone, we lose that tether to a time when the nation figured out how to be a better version of itself. Not that they were saints. Not that those times were any better than these. I mean, we rounded up the Japanese. But in some respects, they were better because they understood responsibility. They went, they toughed it out, they didn't whine. They accomplished an increasingly daunting mission. Sickening heartbreak, hardship, terror. Today, for those who remain that are World War II veterans, thank you. At the end of Saving Private Ryan, Captain Miller, the character played by Tom Hanks, he lays dying and he gives one last instruction to Private Ryan, the young man that he and his unit had sacrificed their lives to rescue in Normandy. And all he says is two words. Do you remember what they were? Earn it. In other words, don't waste the sacrifices that were made so that your life could be saved. Live it well. Earn this freedom. Earn it. Can we even say that anymore? That we've earned the sacrifices that were made by the Americans on June 6, 1944, or at any time that we're earning our freedom? Today, in the name of the game of politics, media, really all walks of life, when it comes to the choices that we make, we deflect, we defend, we shout down, we attack. Where are the leaders? Where are the real leaders among us? And one of the most amazing things in history that nobody really talks about, it was 5 a.m. on June 5th. Dwight D. Eisenhower, he had consulted with the Allied commanders one last time. This was it. This was the day they had planned for. This is the day they dreaded. This was the day everything turned. The weather was unpredictable. It had been bad for so long. The military was like a caged animal waiting every day. And then one of the largest gambles in history. It came down to one guy, Eisenhower. Ike had to make the call.